for the longest time I had this conversation of like, okay, money doesn't mean anything. I want to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
It means giving back, But in the last 5 plus years of being an entrepreneur, I also realized, okay, it's not just one or the other. It's not either you're evil and making money or you're saving the world and making shit, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a healthy balance.
100%.
And money is not evil. It's what you do with it, right?
Yeah, it's energy. It's a tool. It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. So I definitely went through my journey of like, holy shit, I just quit my 6-figure job and I'm making $0. So there was definitely that fear, but was there
any doubts though? Like, did you
there
have
was
doubts?
never a doubt because I know I can make money.
Yeah.
I know I'm very hireable. So I was like, if all goes to shit, which is like not the plan, I can easily get another 6-figure paying job. But if I don't do this now and create Neon Now and go after my passions and pursue my coaching business and everything, when the hell am I going to do it?
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. She's a multi-passionate entrepreneur whose mission in life is to inspire people to break free of limitations and to truly live an authentic life of vision, passion, and purpose. Welcome to the podcast, Elaine Huang.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
It's exciting to have you. I heard a lot of things about you. I know we had a special friend of yours on the podcast.
My boo.
Your boo? Yeah.
Sergio. Shout out to Sergio.
What's up, Sergio? Thank you for being on the podcast. But so I'm excited to have you. I know that you have done a lot of things in your life and you're still doing amazing things. But as always, like we like to start the podcast by getting to know people, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So let's just talk about it. I guess tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you grew up, how that was, and
Yeah. So I am a first generation Chinese American. So my parents are both from China. They don't even speak English, actually. So they
so very
came
traditional.
here. Very traditional. They moved to Chinatown, San Francisco, where they weren't required to learn English.
Wow.
And so that was about I'm turning 33 this week. So that was probably 35 years ago. They had the intention of coming here to America to create a better life for their future children, aka myself and my younger brother. So I basically grew up with my grandparents, actually, because just due to a lot of circumstances, my parents weren't really able to take care of my brother and I here. So they thought it was going to be better to send us to China, to where my grandparents can take care of us.
So you grew up in China?
So I grew up in China. So I was born here in America. And then I lived in China from like the age of 0, like 1 to 5.
Okay.
Then I came back for kindergarten.
Okay.
Because I knew they didn't want me to come back and not know English and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually came back in time for kindergarten.
So what was it like from age 1 to 5 in China? Talk about that.
So I don't have a ton of memories, but I will say there were some happy memories of I knew how to ride a bike when I was a kid, but not when I was an adult. So maybe it was a tricycle. So it was simple, right? Like living in China, it was always the markets, people. I think I did from photos I see. So I'm not sure if it's my memories or the photos that I saw, but I did dance and ballet and all this stuff. And life was, I guess, simple in China. But once again, I don't have too many memories aside from the ones of memories of my aunt, right? Memories of my grandma, memories of my grandpa. It was just visuals of them, not so much of what I did. But I always knew that I was away from my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the saying that says that your subconscious is basically designed or programmed from age 0 to 7?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So anything you learn from age 0 to 7 is your subconscious. So whatever happened to you during that time or whatever you learned, that's basically ingrained in you. And that's where 80 to 90% of your life decisions come from age 0 to 7.
Well, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
That explains a lot. Because I'm choosing not to remember some of those things.
Yeah, really? What do you mean by that?
I definitely had a really rough childhood growing up.
Okay.
So there was a lot of pain and abuse. So those are the things that I do remember.
Okay.
And it's funny, I've done a lot of work, especially from my late 20s to now. So let's say for the last 6 years, I've done a lot of trainings, like transformational work, leadership work. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 6 years now. So also a lot in that space. So I'm always looking to grow. But I realized that a few years ago when I actually went to a seminar, it was more like an emotional, experiential type of learning. It wasn't like just like a pump up. So I just came from Tony Robbins, his UPW and Date with Destiny, which there's some deeper work there too, but it's a lot more like kind of inspiring. Like whereas I did this other training, it's called MITT, and that
I've heard of MITT.
Yeah, so MITT, so it's in LA, and and I did that, and that was not what I signed up for. Like I thought I was signing up to like level up my business.
Right.
I'm very grateful for the experience, and honestly, if I didn't do it, I don't think my partner Sergio and I would be together.
Okay.
And so many things.
Everything happens for a reason, right?
Yes, and so as I'm doing this work, I realized that some of my motivations that I thought were like, about changing the world and making things better, they still are. But that place stems from pain.
Right.
But I didn't realize that until I had to dive in deeper to certain things that I don't even like remember or chose to acknowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes like we look at adversity or pain or bad things happening to us. Maybe at the time it felt real bad and you didn't understand why. But usually that's what builds people. Like I don't think anybody that had like a super easy life, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think it's harder for them to succeed in life than somebody who had like a hard knock life, so to speak, right? Because it kind of gives you the street smarts, it makes you mentally tough, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It makes you gritty and like that drive. And it's like, I'm going to get this done.
Yeah, one of my friends, like Heather and I, were like, we're the scrappy sisters.
Nice.
You got to get scrappy.
Yeah. So you mentioned you grew up in China till 5. So you still had about 2 years of your subconscious formed here in the United States. So when you came from China, where did you go? San Francisco, Chinatown first?
No, so at that point, my parents lived in, I think my dad was still in New York / coming back to California, but Richmond. So Richmond District, San Francisco. So I lived in and grew up in Richmond until like I was 17, 18. Then we moved around like a lot more.
So Richmond District, what's the difference between Richmond District and Richmond, California?
So Richmond District is in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
It's like another like mini Chinatown.
Oh, okay.
So I lived in like 3 places. So I was born in Chinatown. I lived in Richmond, San Francisco, which is like a mini Chinatown. And I lived in Sunset, which is also like another mini Chinatown in San Francisco. So
wow.
So yeah, my parents lived in their kind of Asian bubble for quite some time.
But it's not just the Asians that do that. I mean, I'm Hispanic, right? I mean, my father's from Mexico, my mother's from here, but there's some Mexicans that come here, and there's a Hispanic bubble, right?
Yeah.
They don't need to learn English, but what's crazy about that, and I don't know if it's the same for the Asian culture, because I know the Asian culture, they're business minded, they help each other a lot more, right? But for the Hispanic culture, I noticed that it kind of hurts them, because if you come to the United States and you never learn English, like it's kind of hard to move forward. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of pigeonholed into certain jobs, certain businesses, right? But like, or the other way, if like my dad, when he came here, he actually was like, you know what? I need to learn English. I need to learn it as good as I can. And he actually worked his way up in the tech industry and was making over $250,000 a year when he retired. No degree, came from Mexico, barely spoke English when he came here, right? But because he was a leader, he learned English and he just thought differently. He made it like pretty far, I'd say. Yeah. So talk about that, right? Like, cause your parents, I mean, growing up in these areas, like how do you say did that mold you? Did that help you in a way? Because I know there's a lot of good principles that you learn from that too, especially the Asian culture. Cause I don't know too much about it, but what I heard is that you guys are very united. You help each other out, and it's mainly business minded, right? And especially if you kind of grew up in China, like you probably saw that without even realizing it. You just saw it everywhere, right? So talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So yes, I will speak for the majority, I guess, of Chinese people. Yes, it's very like business minded, but at the same time, it's kind of weird, right? It's like they value success. So I was raised to value success, status, money, but at the same time, like keeping my head down. So it's like, you better be successful, right? With like good grades. And there's all these things like, they value certain things like being a doctor or a
Right.
lawyer.
Yeah,
So there's they
Okay.
value money and status,
Uh-huh.
but the idea of, entrepreneurship is not as normal, right? So I am not
Right.
normal. However, I took after my dad because my dad was an entrepreneur.
Right.
He had many failed businesses, however, right?
Mhm.
So
That's the journey of an entrepreneur, right?
so it's another like, oh, don't follow after the footsteps of your dad. Like, look what look at the pain he's caused us, right? So they value status, they value money, but they also value rules.
Right.
And these rules are like, well, I broke all of them, but basically, I should not have purple hair. I should not have tattoos. I have a bunch of those.
Right.
Shouldn't be dating a Mexican, aka Sergio. Like, I should be with a nice
Yeah.
Chinese boy with
Yeah.
a good job, good family, good background.
Right.
And the thing is, like, for me, I shouldn't be too ambitious
Wow.
because no
Okay.
man is going to want a woman that's so ambitious. And FYI, I do know how to cook, but I choose not to cook as
Right.
much. Because they're like, oh, like, you're going to be such a bad homemaker. Like, who's
Yeah.
going to want you? And I'm like, he can cook his own damn shit. Like, so
You're like, he better know how to
there's so
cook.
many rules, right, for who
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be.
So the,
to, like,
the,
look
the
good.
women's role is a little different, right?
And then who I'm supposed to be with,
Right.
right? And then like money and status is valued, but at the same time, you don't really talk about money. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can like curse in this.
No,
but,
you
like,
can. Go
it's
ahead.
so
Yeah.
fucked
It's
up.
hating it up. Yeah.
Like, so yeah, there's just this huge set of rules
Mhm.
that's quite confusing and conflicting, and it's still confusing now, even though I've chosen the path that's like my own.
Mhm.
I noticed that some of those ways that I was raised and some of those limiting beliefs or some of those things that are awkward topics, like some of those things stick with me,
Right.
even though I chose my own path, right?
Right.
Such as like money and like showing our emotions. And I'm so open to people I meet.
Right.
Like I met you just now and I gave you a hug.
Right.
But it's like so awkward to show emotions in front of my family.
Oh, in the culture.
Yeah, so it's just like, and then when I said I love you for the first time, I think I was like, it was right after I did MITT. I was like, I never said I love you because they never said I love you.
Right.
Oh, to your family.
Yeah. And so when
Okay.
I said I love you, like I had to work through a lot of shit, right? And I was like, I love you. And my mom's like, what's wrong? Kind of like, are you dying? And my dad said, thank you.
Oh, wow.
You're welcome. Like,
So emotions
weird.
is like a business transaction. Or like
Yeah.
he didn't know how to process it. He's like, okay.
yeah. So it was definitely odd, I guess, like growing up. And I feel like the way I was brought up versus like the person I either like wanted to be or the person that I am deep down
Right.
is so different than
Right.
I guess how I was raised.
Yeah.
And also, do you think like however they were raised or environment, they just don't know how to show affection and emotions?
Yeah. I totally believe that like whatever it is that like I went through or like the love or the just like acknowledgement or any of the things I feel like I didn't get or the bad things that I did get, I'm sure that has to do with my grandpa, right? And then my grandpa's dad and like so on and so forth. So I'm sure it's a generational cultural thing. So I know that they did the best they could. And now I'm like, heck no, I'm not going to do that to my kids, you know?
Yeah.
You're the cycle breaker.
Yeah.
You are the cycle breaker.
Breaking generational curses.
And traumas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it's like almost in every culture, right? And then our parents, they just, like you said, it's mainly out of love because they want you to be successful. So they say, okay, well, this is what helped at least our generation be successful. But if you think about it, you come from a completely different generation. So what worked for our parents probably is not going to work for us, right?
Nope.
And what worked for us is probably not going to work for our kids either because it's completely different generations. So, there's good and bad in everything, right? So what would you say caused you to kind of like say, you know what, this is not for me. I want something different. Is there anything in particular that happened to you? Was it just because it was always in you? Like, I feel like I need to do something different. Like, this isn't me. Where did that come from?
So, I mean, I'm sure like as I do more and more work on myself, I'm like, oh shit, this stuff dates back to way older than I like think about, right? That I notice on the surface. And so I would say ever since I was young, like I went through like a lot of pain. Like there's been a lot of like just pain. Like, I feel like I did not have a normal childhood
Mhm.
based off of like my parents, like them being around, them not being around.
Yeah.
And I never got to like play with other kids, and it was always like secretive, and like we never really told like my classmates or my teachers like what was really actually happening at home.
Mm-hmm.
And like because of my dad's background, like my family, as in relatives, always looked down on us.
Okay, because
And
he was an
so-
entrepreneur.
The entrepreneur part was later. Let's just say he was a gangster.
Ah,
So,
okay.
without
So
getting
now the
too
truth
much
comes
into
out,
it,
yeah.
like,
He's
because,
an
you know,
OG.
certain things
Okay.
I feel like is mine to tell, certain things are not.
Hey, it's all
Yeah,
good.
But
of course.
yes, let's just
So
start
he wasn't
with that.
very traditional either.
He wasn't traditional either. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, what the hell, man? Like,
Yeah.
so they're like, oh, do as I say, not as I do, you know? So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so,
And that's funny. Parents don't realize kids don't do what you say; they do what you do.
like a well-off family. Like,
Mhm.
they weren't rich, but they were well-off. And my dad came from a super poor family.
Okay.
So they had this, like, Romeo and Juliet story. So,
Like the forbidden love, right?
so my mom was the youngest. And so here she is telling me not to do all this stuff when I know the story. Like, her ass got disowned by her
Yeah.
family because she chose to be with a bad boy.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wait, so what are you telling me? She's like, well, don't be like me. And so that was like dating back to China. And so growing up, like there was already this like image of my dad, therefore my family, therefore like we were the broken kids, and like
Ah.
kind of like, oh, like, you know, like father, like kind of like for my brother and my
Yeah.
dad. So, and so whenever I did something bad, like cut school, I mean, I did do a bunch of stuff that I guess wasn't the good girl.
The traditional, the cultural.
Yeah, and so they're like,
norm.
oh, of course she's like that, right?
Right.
Like,
Oh, wow.
of course, you know, my
Yeah.
brother's like that. My brother's like great, you know, he's not like me. He's more
Well, you seem to turn out okay.
like by the book, like
Right.
more so than me. And so basically, I feel like my whole life we were judged in that
Mhm.
way, and through just all the trauma and the pain that I went through, I just knew that deep within I was like, hey, I want to escape this. I was like, when I grow up, whatever growing up means, right? Let's say from a kid to a teenager to an adult. It's
Yeah.
like when I grow up, I don't want to live a life like this. Like, and I want to help other people.
So how old were you when you started figuring that out?
I was young. So this goes back to like, I would think it falls under the under 7
Yeah,
category.
7? Okay, got it.
Because I remember always daydreaming because I
Right.
hated my real life.
Yeah.
And I remember kids, they would like wait for 2:40 because that's what time elementary school gets out.
Okay.
But I remember like I would look at the clock and dread as the day went on because that meant it was after school and I had to go home.
Oh, so you didn't want to go
Yeah.
I
home.
didn't want to
God.
go home.
School was your escape.
Yeah, so I loved school. I loved school, you know? And so
Yeah.
not because of school, but it was
No,
just like
because-
I was like I
was
was
your
with
way
other
out.
people, right? Like I
Right.
felt like safe. I felt like I could be myself. At home, I was just like be proper, don't get in trouble, don't get your ass whooped, you know? And
Yeah.
so I just always went into my own like imaginary place of like
Yeah.
where it was better. Things were
Mhm.
better.
So the home was more about. It wasn't like it was more like discipline. Would you say it was more like strict, very disciplinarian, and school was like your freedom?
Hmm.
Is that kind of what it
Yeah.
was?
You get
Yeah.
to be more creative
Yeah.
as well.
Like at school, I was able to be myself, and
Okay.
I was like, I had friends, like I was liked, and I remember like always being the one like standing up for the people that were bullying other people too.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
But at
that's
home,
cool.
like I did not speak up. I was just like I tried to be as invisible as possible.
All right.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you kind of were like living two different lives, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. And what do you think? So as you started to daydream and break out of it, what was like your advice? Like what helped you get out of that, or was there anything you started to develop like as young to help you break out of that? Like you said, you were already protecting kids that were bullied, so you kind of became like a leader and like a protector. Was that kind of like what started to develop because of that, or?
I have no idea. Like I always feel like I was the peacemaker.
Okay.
So I'll
peacemaker.
always be like the person, and even at home, like I'll always try to like diffuse a situation.
Mhm.
But if I saw something that like wasn't cool, then yeah, like I remember like we would have these Foursquare battles. I don't know if you guys
Okay.
know what Foursquare is.
I've heard of it,
You-
but can you explain
No.
it to
It's
everybody?
like a game where you like hit the ball and you could win if the other person doesn't get the ball. So if like there was some sort of injustice in elementary school, we'll challenge you to a Foursquare battle.
Oh wow.
It was totally
It's
silly.
like West Side
but
Story with Foursquare, right? Yeah.
it was totally silly, but I just remember like that was just my thing. I was happy at school. Like I loved being able to like hang out with other people, play with other kids. And at home, I wasn't allowed to like go to other kids' birthday parties, nor was I allowed to have people over. My family was
that?
more secretive. We were not traditional. So I guess
Was it because your dad was a gangster?
probably like
Okay, yeah.
I was like, well, you know, you don't tell your friends or your teacher at school like what your dad does.
Right.
I kind of understand that because I have a friend whose father was the leader of a very prominent motorcycle gang. And so like, you know, it was almost like not even talked about. Like it was a different life, right? So you think that's kind of what it was, like more to protect you than anything else, or?
I think so. It's to protect me. It's to protect themselves. It's to protect. It's for face, right?
Right.
Face and pride is huge. So in a way, right? If you are a gangster, you get a lot of respect.
Right.
But on the opposite end, it's like let's say relatives didn't respect that, right? Like you get respect in a certain way.
Yeah.
But in another way, it's like it's something to hide, right? It's like you don't like want to advertise that to the world.
Yeah. Hey.
It's like depends on like from whom do you get respect?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you get respect in the streets for being a gangster, and then your relatives who are like business-minded people, entrepreneurs or whatever, they don't
Just
they look
straight
down
like
like
straight
that,
edge,
right?
like even
Yeah,
straight
straight
edge,
edge.
like working people and definitely not tell the teacher, you know, like
Yeah.
that'd be bad news.
So was there like a lot of like people following these traditional roles in your family, like doctors, and the women kind of fell into like the homemaker role? So was most of your family traditional?
Yes, most of my family is traditional. By the way, none of them really speak English, so it's more of like they worked jobs, but like regular people jobs, and a couple of them have like husbands that are like better off, as in like they do know English,
like upper middle class. A little
yes,
bit? Yeah.
and one of them is an entrepreneur, like in Hong Kong. So it's like they were more normal, therefore more accepted.
So normal, and I like that you said that, because to me, when I was young, or even now, if someone says, "What's your biggest fear?" Right? You know, people ask that, right? I said being average. Like to me, being normal, being average is failure. To me, that's like I failed in life. Like that's my. And again, if that's what you like I'm not trashing people that have jobs and they have the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence and the 2 dogs and all that kind of stuff. That's totally fine, right? But to me, I always wanted to do something bigger, always better. And I went through adversity too young. And so what I've learned from the podcast, and when we talk to people, anybody who's either an entrepreneur, they're doing something big, they didn't have it easy. You know what I mean? So it kind of builds like a drive. Like you're tough, obviously, because like you said, I know you don't want to talk about it too much, but probably growing up in the household, it wasn't probably fun. You know what I mean? But that made you tough, whether you realize it or not. And in life, to be successful, you have to be tough. Would you agree?
Yes.
Can you explain that? Because I know you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
but can you explain how maybe the toughness at the time it probably sucked because you're a kid and you're like, I just want to be a normal kid, right? But as you get older and you start to realize, like, okay, maybe it was a bad thing then, but maybe it made me a lot more tough than most people. Can you explain how that kind of might have helped you in life?
Yeah. So I learned this probably later on because honestly, as a kid, it was just more of like, why the hell is this happening to me?
Of course.
It was like, I just want to be a normal kid. I just want to have like hang out with friends, play dates, go to birthday parties, and watch more than 30 minutes of TV, which is what I was allowed.
Oh, wow.
And I had to like learn math and like Chinese characters the rest of the time. So I was like, you know, why can't I just be a normal kid? And it was just like, kind of like, as a victim. Now we know, like now that we're older, we know what's like what a victim is. But as a kid, you kind of don't really have any power. So I came from a place of like, I wish my life was different.
Right.
And then I think towards like my teenage years, like I call it my Eminem girl phase.
Okay. Eminem girl.
Like the rapper Eminem?
Yes. I had my CD like repeating like the way I am and like all this other.
So lots of anger, right?
and then so I eventually became really angry. Like angry to the point where it's like, one day I'm going to show you, like for all the pain you put me through, like one day I'm going to show you guys, not as in hurt them, but it's like hurt myself, like something like
you want to do something to prove yourself.
Yes. Like I was like, oh, like you guys are going to see what the hell you guys did to me. Like it was a very like angry phase. And during that phase, like.
And how old were you when this angry phase was happening?
So I want to say whenever Eminem came out, not because of Eminem, but he really helped me through like some tough times. So like
the early 2000s?
So I want to say like definitely when I was like middle school and high school. So I was probably like 13.
Yeah. So like early 2000s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like around that time I was like just angry. And then I started like, I think rebelling.
Right.
So like I'm telling you like, I guess my motivations in the beginning, I was trying to be invisible.
Right.
Because I was trying to protect myself from being hurt.
As a defense mechanism.
Yes. And then then I went to the angry phase, which is like F the world.
Right, yeah.
And then at that point, like, I'm sure my parents were like, what the hell? Like I literally would hear my mom talk to my aunts and be like, well, at least your kid talks back. Like my kid doesn't say anything.
Wow.
Like, and then my brother was obviously the favorite because he's the guy. I love my brother. He's like my best friend, but like I hated him too. I was like, what the hell, man? This kid, he's 2 years younger. He's like, he can do anything and nothing is wrong because he's the son, right? And I'm the older sister. I'm supposed to be the responsible one. And so I just like shut down. Yeah. And like I started like cutting school, like, and I just like faked all my papers, like, and from my parents and notes. And I started going to Chinatown and hanging out with the gangster boys. So literally everything my mom said she made a mistake on, I like kind of followed down that path. And then eventually
everything they tried to prevent you from doing, you ended up doing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like it was like this. And then I started like eventually in my later teens, like early adulthood, I like tried drugs.
Yeah.
Cause I was like, you know what? F this. And there were drugs in my family as well. So I literally just kind of did everything that I felt like I wasn't supposed to do and I knew better.
Rebelling. So you're like, hey, you tell me no, I'm going to do it and do it.
Yeah.
More.
And so, but somewhere along the lines of that, I think it was like when I was like 16 and on. Not saying I didn't do anything bad beyond 16. I still did. But I got my first job. It was at a nonprofit. So it was called, it was like CYC. It was like the Community Youth Center or Chinese Community Youth Center. Okay. And then my division was called Young Asian Women Against Violence.
Okay.
So it was a nonprofit. So I got paid under minimum wage. But that like sparked something in me because that was when I learned about a lot of like injustices. And of course, like I went to like juvenile hall to like speak to kids. And so something in me, like I always knew I wanted to help people, right? But something in me like kind of sparked. Yeah. And around that time, my brother also got falsely accused of like jumping, like a whole bunch of like Asian kids got accused for jumping this like Mexican guy at our school.
Okay.
And so I was friends with like everyone. I was never like just the Asian, like Asian kids. I was never that type of person. Chameleon. But I knew that my brother would never do something like that. And plus he wasn't even there, but he got sent to juvie.
Oh, wow.
And like, that's really scary for someone that was, I think I was like 16. So he was probably 14. So it was really, really scary.
Yeah. And if you, like you said, he probably had it easier. So he wasn't ready for that.
Yeah. And he is like such a good kid. Like not the school cutting, like.
What did your dad say when that happened?
So my dad believed him and my mom believed him, but my entire family said, like father, like son. And I was like, oh, hell no. So I was like,
I'm going to protect him now.
So at that point, you know, our relationship was kind of rocky, but I guess when something happens like that, it's like my like older sister came out. And so like we did all these like protests and I went to City Hall, like it was on TV and everything. And this whole like, where's the proof? Like, where's the evidence? And so anyways, he got released. Nice. We got a bunch of press and like he got released and a couple of my other friends did too. And at that point I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. Like,
so you're like, hey, this works. Yeah.
I was like, this is cool. Like actually, I can use my passion or my fire or my pain or whatever it
your
was
voice
to do something. To do something good. And so around that time was when I think my desire for serving or helping others was growing inside. I wouldn't say like, you know, I still went through my dark path, but that was like the beginning of me knowing like my calling.
That sparked.
Yes.
That's pretty cool though. How old were you when that happened?
Like 16.
That's very young to find your calling.
16, but I was still, you know, it was a calling like brewing inside, right? Okay. And then a series of situations, and then like me really coming into my own
Yeah.
a few years later.
So I have a question too, though. So because your father, was doing what he's doing, was your brother kind of like protected, or was it just kind of like fair game for him when all that kind of stuff happened? Like, was your dad like known? Because you said, "Oh, I hung out with all the gangsters and stuff." Did they know who your father was, or it was kind of like nobody knew except for your family?
No, so that was much later. So my dad actually really changed his path
Okay.
because he actually went to prison when I
Oh.
was young. So that's another that's another thing. So yes,
Yeah.
he actually went to prison. And when he went to prison for a few years, he came out and actually really tried to turn his life around.
Okay.
So by the time we were teenagers and all that stuff happened, that life was behind him.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when your subconscious was formed, that life was full force.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
awesome. So now, like, you helped your brother, you freed him, started brewing a little bit. What happened after that?
What happened after that was my parents decided to move to Sacramento.
Okay.
So then it was going to be my senior year. So I had to move. Like I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in San Francisco.
Right.
But they were like, no, your ass is coming to Sacramento. And so my senior year, I had to move to Sacramento. And
Was that when like everybody was kind of moving out of like the Bay Area and heading to Sacramento? Or was it still kind of dead?
Like none of my friends were moving to Sacramento.
course,
I was the
yeah.
only one. So.
Yeah.
So
This is the early 2000s
this
or
is
mid,
like,
right?
so now I'm like 16, 17.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess do them. I don't know.
And those are like your best years in high school too. Like you have all your friends,
Yes.
you're starting to develop your identity,
Yes.
and then you take off to Sacramento.
Yes. So that was like not great. And so basically my life, my community, my friends, like, I'm doing this like nonprofit stuff, that kind of just went away.
Oh wow.
And then I had to start over and like make new friends in Sacramento. It was a tough year. And yeah, I think that's when things went downhill. I like was in a bad relationship.
Right.
It was not a great relationship. And then it was kind of like one relationship after another.
Right.
And at that point, I had found a lot of my self-worth in being with whoever I was with.
Yeah. So you're putting your self-worth in your partner.
Yes. And so I just felt like I stayed in like not the best relationships for the next like, I guess 18 to 21. It wasn't long, but it was like 3 non-healthy relationships.
That still has
3 years of bad relationships can do a wonder. on you.
that can seem like 5 years to be in 3-year toxic
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
That could seem a long
Yeah.
time.
So
Yeah.
how did you break out of that?
Well, so how I broke out of that was, it was like an abusive relationship. Like it wasn't a physically abusive relationship because I already knew I was never going to let anyone put a hand
Right.
on me again.
Yeah, you're like, I'm
since I was
gangster.
like a child. So no one like ever touched me like that. But it was like a mentally, emotionally abusive relationship, which
Sometimes those
I
can
don't
be
know,
worse.
that's worse, right? Like,
yeah.
and so that ended. I just had to end it. Like this person like faked his death and everything, and my dad,
Oh my gosh.
the gangster, came out. He was like, "If he's not dead, I'm about to go kill him."
You're like, whoa.
And so I mean, so anyways, that ended, and then I actually made it. I got into a bunch of the UC schools.
Okay.
So that was something that was not expected from myself, my family, or any of my relatives.
Right.
They were quite shocked.
Yeah, because you're like, I wasn't even trying. Yeah.
I wasn't even trying in school, but what really I feel like got me in is my extracurriculars
Right.
and my nonprofit and
Well,
all
there
my
you go.
activism
Yeah.
stuff. So I was like, wow, my GPA was kind of crappy, but
Yeah.
I got in. And so I ended up going to UC Davis.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so my parents were like, I feel like that was the first time in my
Now
life
it's like,
they were proud.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they actually say it?
They didn't say it, but how you know is when you hear them talking on the phone with other people. Oh, my daughter made it into this school and this school and this school, right?
Yeah.
Like, in Cantonese. And so I ended up going to UC Davis, but I was never into school. And
Right.
so I actually ended up like I only told my parents about this like in the last few years. Like I ended up like cutting school, like once again, like hanging with the wrong crowd, did my
Right.
drugs, was dating that guy that I dated for like 2 years.
Right.
I went out to San Francisco a lot. Like I moved in with him. So it was just like a shit show. And I pretended because my parents were so proud. I didn't have the heart to like break their heart. And so
Right.
I did so bad in school that I lost all my financial aid.
Wow.
And so I was like, what am I going to do? My parents are not rich people. They had a struggle. They had like their fourth struggling business at that point, right? Like a Chinese restaurant and like a kitchen and granite shop. And so I pretended like I was getting financial aid, and I worked 3 jobs just so I could pay the rent that financial aid was supposed to cover and my tuition.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was like I was living a lie because I didn't want to disappoint them. But really I was like trying to also escape my own life at the same time. And so when that relationship ended, I think I was 21, that boyfriend cheated on me. And so that was like the end of my like men. Like that was like, I was like, screw men. I was like, F you guys. Like, and then I went on my like independent woman journey.
Yeah.
And so at that point, what happened was I was like in and out. I was in the Bay Area. I was like kind of like in school, but not. And then my younger brother got into UC Davis. And so my parents were like, it would mean the world to us if you came back to UC Davis and finished school like with your brother, like graduated together from UC Davis. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever.
Their dream come true, right?
So I came back to UC Davis, and I actually found this amazing internship. It's called Collegeworks painting, and it's a house painting thing, right? But the idea of it is you start and run your own business from the ground up. I would say that's like my top 3 life experiences ever. So I literally like went knocking on doors, like in Elk Grove, Sacramento, like gave painting estimates, learned how to run my own business, like made the sale, hired the painters, like managed profit, customer satisfaction. And so that
this was a
summer,
class?
it's an internship,
Okay.
where you make money as well. So my mom's like, why can't you do normal things? Like go work at the government, like push papers. And I came back with like paint all over myself instead. So like, what are you doing? Like, and so that was a really time intensive internship. But it really taught me that I can do anything.
Yeah.
I ran an $80,000 business that year as a 20-year-old, I guess, 21-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I was like, holy shit. And so that was the first time that I found worth in myself.
That's awesome.
Like not some dude I was dating, like not how popular or the friends or the cool guys or the gangsters, like whatever. It was just like, holy shit, like I'm badass. And so that was my first time realizing that. And then my mind like went from like, okay, I think I can be a business woman of some sort, whether that's like quit college because I was never into it. Like I can.
So you never finished school?
Never finished school. I continued on with that internship. They promoted me to actually train and hire and work with college students. So for a couple years, I mentored college students while still kind of like half-ass, like quarter-ass going to school.
Yeah, which is hilarious. You're mentoring college students and you're like, I'm not even going to finish college.
Because like, so what I believe is, okay, they tell you college, like your ass better go to college. But guess what? People graduate college and work at Starbucks. Nothing's wrong with Starbucks, but college is no longer what it used to be. You're not guaranteed a job. And even if you
100%.
are, like how much are you getting paid, right? So
a degree is like a passport.
Yeah. And honestly, if it's not for you, it's not for you. Don't force yourself to do it just because people expect you to do it.
Yeah. So the types of people that I feel like this internship attracted were more like hands-on real world experience,
hustlers,
and then ultimately
grinders.
Like a lot of people that did the internship, like maybe they were on a path of like being an engineer or something, and they realized, oh shit, like I'm passionate about business, right? And so that's the path I went down, and eventually I got recruited for a few different jobs, and I finally worked up the courage to tell my parents at the age of like 23-ish, like early 20s. I was like, I got recruited for a job. Don't kill me. I'm quitting school. Like,
my God.
You closed your eyes when you did that?
I was so scared. I was so scared because like, I don't know, like they just always instilled in me that college was the route to go.
Yeah.
The route to take.
It was for what they knew.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt, but like it's the same for me. Like I barely just made it out of school because I wanted to, so my parents, like it took me 8 years to graduate.
Yeah.
And my sister got her master's degree in 5. So my sister almost passed me up with her master's, younger, obviously, right? I'm the older. I'm supposed to be the example.
Yeah.
And I was the black sheep, the one, but it's always the first kid that they kind of mess up on because they're practicing, right? You know what I mean? And then they're like, well, we're not going to do that with the next one, right? But anyways, so, I mean, it's okay. It's kind of like, it kind of was what gave you who you are now. You know what I
And
mean?
also, I think obviously it's a different generation. We think differently,
Yeah.
and our opportunities are different too from our parents' opportunities.
Yeah. So at one point, at one time, getting a degree and going to get a job might have been okay. Like when I went to school, and maybe kind of like near the tail end of when you went to school, it cost me $11,000 a year to go to school. And this is Cal State Los Angeles, which is a state school, right? It's an accredited business school. Now it's $30,000 a quarter. It was just triple, right? So what cost my parents probably, plus with some financial aid, probably maybe 30 grand. Now would cost an average family $90,000. You know what I mean? And like you said, and again, I'm not against education because everyone should have an education, but it's not a guarantee, right? It's not. The mistake that most parents make is that this is going to guarantee you success in life, when that's not going to guarantee success. People skills, leadership skills, business mindset, street smarts, hustle, hard work. You're going to whoop anybody with a degree if they don't have that. Now, if they have a degree and they have that, well, then that's a little bit different, right? Have you ever seen that meme that has 50 Cent? And he goes, I never went to Harvard, but everybody that works for me did.
No, but that sounds like he would say.
Yeah. And he's almost like a billionaire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Kanye West is a billionaire. Like all these people that maybe didn't go to school, but they have the street hustle, they have the business mind, they're just eccentric, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Also, it's the grind. And the self-talk that they instill in themselves every single day, especially people coming from the hard knock life. Like every single day, they instill that in their mind. It's a conditioning too. So
yeah.
So now you tell your parents, I'm quitting school. What happened?
So I was shocked. Like, I thought they were going to disown me. But they actually, my dad didn't agree. First off, he says,
Yeah.
I don't think you should. But
That's
at this
not
point,
as bad as you probably
it
thought.
wasn't as bad as I thought. Like, but at this point, I think they saw that I was making something of myself because they had seen that I worked like long ass 12, 16 hours a day. I came back with paint, like they saw I was also very passionate, right? They were like, my mom says, well, we kind of figured because we've never seen you hold a textbook, but you always have paint like all over your body and you're like always waking up early, you're coming back late, like you're always on the phone. They knew I was hustling. Like they knew that for a fact. So I think by then, and they said, and your brother's about to graduate and you're not, so we kind of figure you're not into school. Like, so if you can make a lot of money, and honestly, I was for sure making more money than someone else who graduated and like was looking for a job. They're like, if you are more about work, then I guess like go ahead. And so I was like, woo, like, yay. I was like, that was easier than I thought.
In a way, I think they knew too, because they understand what it takes to be successful. Like you said, your dad was an entrepreneur. He understood. So like you said, they probably saw in you, they go, okay, well, maybe she's not going to get the degree, but she has the qualities and the passion it takes to be successful. Because in the end, like they say, our parents just want us to be successful. They just want the best for us. So they think that school is the best route, right? But it's not for everybody. You know what I mean? But I think they saw it. Like you said, they saw the passion, they saw the hard work, and they go, hey, you know what? As long as she has that, she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, but don't tell anyone you're quitting school. The face coming back again. Like.
Yeah. So what happened after that?
So after that, I went to work for a company, and it was actually, I got a few job offers, but I actually chose the lowest paying base with the highest potential for commissions because I'm very much like a performance-based person.
You believe in yourself.
And so it was a smaller company. I knew I was going to have more say. So I stayed at that company for, I want to say 3.5 years. And I did make more money than I would have made at any of those other places.
Of course.
Before they offered me the partner position.
Wow.
And that was when I had a post-quarter life crisis.
Okay.
At the age of I think I was 26, 27. And I was like, what is the meaning of life? Like, do I want to continue down this path and make potentially a shit ton of money?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to do something different?
Right.
And that's when, like, I was going to New York. I live in New York now with Sergio. And around that time, I was living here in the Bay.
Right.
And I was, like, going to all the festivals. I was, like, traveling. Like, life was pretty good. I had, like, unlimited PTO. But I used some of that PTO to travel to New York because that's where I've always wanted to live ever since I was a little girl.
Wow.
Something about that city is, like, really magical. And so I went back a few times. I interviewed with a bunch of nonprofit like founders, but it was more so of like me interviewing them to figure out, hey, like, how's a nonprofit work? Like, how's yours work? Like, what would it look like if I worked at a nonprofit? Blah, blah, blah. So it was almost like, hey, can I have some of your time? It wasn't like, can I work for you?
Yeah, you're picking their brain.
Yeah. And so what I found out was what I predicted, which is that there's so many rules and regulations in nonprofits. So to me, I knew I wanted to make a difference, but I am not big on rules.
Yeah. It kind of limits your ability to make a difference, right?
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't want to go down the nonprofit route, but neither do I want to stay here and become partner because once I do, I'm pretty much married to this company.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a piece of my soul was like dying every day. Like,
Ooh, that's not good.
and I liked what I did, but I'm the type of person that's like, if I'm not like madly in love,
100%.
Yeah.
then like is not good enough. Like
Yes.
like is like slowly dying, and I'm very picky, so I don't want to slowly die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So basically, you followed your heart, you followed your bliss.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always talk about that because, the main reason this podcast is even in existence is because of, everybody wanted to find their true purpose and follow their bliss, so we say, right? And, you already realized it. You said, I mean, I could be making all kinds of money. Because Gary Vee, you mentioned him earlier, right?
Yeah, I love him.
So he says, he has this quote. He says, it's not how much money you make, but how you make your
The
money. And I was like, what are you talking about, Gary Vee? But then I understood.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about if you're not passionate about it, if it's not your purpose, who cares how much money you make? Number one, you're probably not going to go that far anyways. And number two, you're going to be kind of just going through life, kind of like a chore, kind of like a routine. Excuse me. But if you find your purpose, they say when a person finds their purpose, they come alive, right? So yeah, I mean, that's what it was. Like you knew you had opportunity, and you believed in yourself, which is big because you're like, most people say, I want to take the higher paying job, but they always say that people who believe in themselves take commission jobs because they're betting on themselves, right? They don't want no caps, right? So then, a couple questions I have for you. Where did the love for New York come from? And then number two, where did that belief in yourself come from?
So my love for New York, I remember. So first off, actually, when I was in my mom's belly, like before she gave birth, she lived in New York with my dad. So I'm like, blame yourselves. Like,
yeah.
And so they hated it. Like my mom hated it at least. She was like, oh, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's dirty, which it's all of those things, but it's also amazing. So,
Right. I mean, San Francisco's kind of very similar,
Like there's something about the New York energy. So when I was 11, I went there with my family and I was like, wow. Like I was like, all these people, all these lights. So something like stuck.
Yeah.
And then you watch all these movies, right?
It was imprinted on you.
You're like, oh my gosh. And then, but that was it. That was the one time I went there. But in my 20s, I went back multiple times and it never lost its magic.
Okay.
And so I was like, one day I'm going to live here.
So New York picked you.
Yes. Yes. So something about the energy, it really felt in alignment to me.
Okay.
Like they say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Empire, state of mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just felt like I had plateaued, I guess, here.
Mhm.
I have so many friends. I have my community here and my job. I have everything here. But I felt like going somewhere where I didn't know anyone or barely knew. I mean, I met a few friends along the way, right? Like going there a few times. But I really felt like going to a brand new place.
You were
right?
comfortable here.
Yeah, like starting, like quitting my job, packing my shit, like taking a 6-week cross-country road trip and moving
Sergio
to the
told us
place
about
I've
that.
always wanted. So that's the second time.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So the first time I went by myself.
Oh, you went by yourself.
So 5 years ago, when I quit my job and I started Neon Owl, I also moved to New York by myself.
Wow. You
And
drove by
then-
yourself all the way across country?
Yeah, 6 weeks by
Wow.
myself.
What was that like? Talk about that, because that's very interesting.
What did you eat? Like,
Oh
yeah.
gosh, I have very vivid images. Like
It's like, ooh.
so, it was a really amazing experience. So I felt so liberated, right? Because I quit my job. And the first stop was to LA. I think it was like Nocturnal Wonderland. So we're really big into festivals.
Okay.
Oh,
that
I've heard of
point-
So it was
Nocturnal
basically a-
Wonderland.
So at that point,
Cross-country
Sergio and
festival.
we knew each other, but we weren't like really connected.
Yeah.
So it was my brother and I and my friends.
Okay.
And I already started Neon Owl at that point. So, and it's all about like music and charity. And so we were like, okay, first stop, LA Nocturnal Wonderland. And so that was also like my farewell party, kind of. So with a few friends and my younger brother, we all went to Nocturnal. And then when we parted ways, like we both cried, like my brother and I,
Yeah.
because his sister was leaving.
Yeah.
Like,
His big sister was taking off. Yeah.
yeah, and so then I remember like having a magical experience with like a lot of my photographer friends that were working with Insomniac, and we like broke into some buildings and like some like the tallest buildings in LA. So I'll always remember that as one of my favorite memories.
You were on an adventure, a daily adventure.
Yes, I was like, this is the start of like something new, like my new life. And then the rest of it was, for the most part, by myself. I did meet with a few friends along the way, but for the most part, it was like random like hotels, Airbnbs. And the weirdest thing I ate, to go back on the food part, was I think I stopped by Louisiana. So I went to some random places, like super random.
Wherever you could stop, right?
Like super random. And then I went to Louisiana. I was at this bar. Like it was like a bar, restaurant. They had music. And I was like, okay, like what's your like best popular dish here? And they were like, oh, like I think it was called crawfish pie.
Yeah.
So FYI, as you get like towards like middle America and like the South, there's less and less veggies. I'll say that much. Like
Yeah.
being from San Francisco and LA, right? Like
Yeah.
you're like, okay. So this crawfish pie was the most odd thing I ate. It was a pie, but it had crawfish in it. But the inside was like butter and cream. It was thick.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
certain that shit was like 5,000 calories.
Yeah. Sounds like a heart
So
attack
and then it was
already.
cheese baked on top.
Oh my god.
So I didn't want to be like disrespectful or anything. But
Yeah, can I get a
that
piece
was
of
not.
broccoli?
That was not. I was shocked. I ate a couple bites and like that was that. But
My
that was
God.
some weird. I was like, this is not my type of food.
That's like good southern
But I
cooking.
ate a
huh?
lot of great food too, like shrimp and grits. Like
Yeah.
that's always delicious, and
Yeah.
bomb ass fried chicken. Like they don't make fried chicken like they do in the South. Like so.
Yeah. So everything except for that crawfish
The
pie.
crawfish pie is a huge no-no.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, I mean, talk about that though, because that's pretty brave to
Yeah.
go across the country by yourself. Like, what was it like when you were just by yourself sometimes? Was it like a lot of self-reflection? Did you learn a lot about yourself, or was it scary? Was it fun? What was that like?
It was many things. So I would say, like, well, first off, everyone thought I was crazy. I was like, oh my God, you're going by yourself. And I did like many solo travels, like internationally after that as well. But I feel like that experience, like I had already traveled solo before, but within the country. But that experience and just quitting my job and moving to New York, like it just felt like anything is possible. So if anything, like it was me expanding my box or breaking free of the box even more, like going by myself. And there were times that were kind of sketchy, but it was always just me being open to new experiences
Right.
and people. And it really was symbolic. It was like literally I packed up my shit. I quit my job. I'm driving away from home and my comfort zone
Right.
into the unknown.
Right.
So I think that's how I'll summarize that whole trip.
Well, they say everything you've ever wanted is right outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I think you kind of shed fear, like any fear you pretty much had most of it had to be shed on that trip.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
It is. And there were still fears, right? Because, like, honestly, when I told everyone I was quitting my 6-figure job,
Right.
it wasn't even to like build this other super profitable business. If anything, like, and that's another story about like my conversation with like for the longest time I had this conversation of like, okay, money doesn't mean anything. I want to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
It means giving back but in the last 5 plus years of being an entrepreneur, I also realized, okay, it's not just one or the other. It's not either you're evil and making money or you're saving the world and making shit, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a healthy balance.
100%.
And money is not evil. It's what you do with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
the
energy.
love.
It's a tool. It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. So I definitely went through my journey of like, holy shit, I just quit my 6-figure job and I'm making $0. So there was definitely that fear, but
was there any
purpose-
doubts though? Like, did you
There
have
was
doubts?
never a doubt because I know I can make money.
Yeah.
I know I'm very hireable. So I was like, if all goes to shit, which is like not the plan, I can easily get another 6-figure paying job. But if I don't do this now and create Neon Owl and go after my passions and pursue my coaching business and everything, when the hell am I going to do it? Like,
You were
that was searching.
following your bliss. That was
Yeah.
a huge example of following your bliss, everyone.
You're always going to wonder what if.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, doing the training recently, like, I learned that one of my top away values, which can be healthy or unhealthy, is I don't want to live with the feeling of regret.
I was about to talk about regret. That's something I'm afraid of. Like, I don't want to be old and be like, oh, I should have done that. I should have done this and that. Like, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Not going
always
there.
say the old people never talk about the things that they regret doing. They talk about the things that they didn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. That was the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out next Monday, 9 a.m. Please stay tuned.
Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when the next one comes out.